Hello and welcome to Podsongs. I'm Jack Stafford and I interview inspiring people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today I'm speaking with one of the most famous journalists in India, but I have no idea what I'm going to talk about because I don't know much about Indian politics or journalism. Well, I'm going to learn. I guess that's why I'm doing this podcast, is to learn. So let me introduce you to Madhu Trehan. Feel, because you're such a famous journalist, you've interviewed so many people so well, I don't really feel that I have the skills to interview you, but I was thinking,
come on.
But Everybody. I was thinking if I was on a train with you, if I met you on a train, you'd be the best person I'd ever traveled with. We'd have a fascinating conversation. So maybe we could just like role play that we're meeting on a train,
Okay.
and we have a bit of a chit chat.
Train to Lisbon.
All right, let's do train to Lisbon. All right, I'll put a bit of an ambient noise here in the background.
Okay.
So just
I
to
only
get a bit
said
of that.
Train to Lisbon because I saw the film and I've started reading the book.
Oh, that's a great place to start. So I'm coming into the carriage now.
Okay.
So, is this seat taken?
No, it isn't. Please do.
Okay,
Sit.
thank you. So what book are you reading?
I'm reading a couple of books. I'm reading a book by Shuri called Preparing to Die, which at my age one has to think about. But he goes into a lot of Hindu scriptures, which I'm not a great fan of in the sense that I do like to read the Vedas and the philosophy behind it, but I don't like the adulation of individuals as gurus. I think that's very dangerous. So, but I think that's just the beginning. Train to Lisbon was a book that I've started now, is a film that I was completely taken by, because here's this boring professor teaching, and a chance encounter changes his life, and he actually drops his teaching profession to chase up a girl who he stops from killing herself on a bridge, and then follows her to Lisbon and tries to look for her, and a whole political story of torture, suppression, all that comes out. But in that, the philosophy of what one moment can change your life to be from something so boring and dull and mundane and routine to something where it makes you challenge yourself and think completely differently.
Gosh, that sounds like I haven't seen that film. I must check it out.
Yeah.
Is it a new film?
No, I don't think so. I think it's probably a couple of years ago, and it's on Mubi, an offbeat channel. So I subscribe to that. And another very amazing, one of the best films I've seen, which I saw on Mubi also, which is a heroic life. It's called A Heroic Life, about Serge Gainsbourg, the French singer.
Yeah.
And it's the most, the technique of how he structured the film is utterly fascinating, on how to bring different nuances and levels of thought, and counter the alter ego dancing at the back, communicating different thoughts and ideas, while the character in front is saying something different. It's magical.
Wow, God, you sound such an interesting person. I can't believe I've just met you on this in this carriage, and we're having this conversation. Do you know?
So where are you?
Oh, I'm going to Lisbon, obviously, as well. Yeah, I've just.
Oh, that's a stupid question to ask, because once I was on a flight and I made so much fun of this woman that I was walking towards the toilet, and she said, "Going to London?" And I said, she's asking me while I'm on a flight, and I did the same to you.
But I can deduce from your accent that you're not from around here. You're from India?
I'm from India.
What do you do in India?
I've been a journalist for now 50 years, 50.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I started first. I was in New York, living in New York for 25 years, and I came back to India when my father turned up. He owned a printing press, and my father turned up with a tabloid dummy of a newspaper, which he was starting with a friend as a favor to him. In those days, friendships were very different, and his friend was retiring from a government job of the Press Information Bureau, and as a favor to him for something to do, they decided to start this newspaper for Indians living abroad, and it was called India Today. And I just graduated from the Columbia School of Journalism, and I looked at it and I told him that this is total crap. You can't do it like this. So he said, "Why don't you come to India and do it?" So I flew back with him, and we started this. My father and I started this news magazine called India Today, which then became subsequently the biggest news magazine in India. It's now, that was 35 years ago, 40 years ago. And then I came back to New York, had a family. And after many years, my husband and I and my two little daughters moved back to India. And then I started a video magazine, because at that time, the Indian government had laws where you could, it was like the Soviet Union, you could not broadcast on television. No private channel was allowed in the country. There was only one government channel called Doordarshan, and that's all that people saw. And by law, you could not broadcast. This was from the 1842 British Telegraph Act, which was still which was still functioning even after our independence. And so to circumvent those laws, we created a video cassette called Newstrack, in which we used to show about 1 hour of video footage of what was really happening in the country, which people never saw. And we used to market that like a news magazine. You could subscribe to it. It would come to you, to your house, delivered like a magazine as a videotape, which today's children don't know what it is even. And then, in fact, my granddaughter was asked by her teacher to bring in something from another generation, which today's generation wouldn't recognize. And she asked me for a VHS tape, which she took in, one of the Newstrack tapes. And in that time, you could also rent it from a video shop. And at that time, for the first time in India, people actually saw a man being bludgeoned to death in political violence, police brutality on camera, which normally used to be a one line in a print paper, like two students have been killed. But we showed that on camera. So there was a lot of pioneering investigative journalism, television journalism work that was done for the first time. Then in the 90s, early 90s, the government changed the rules, and then you were allowed to broadcast. So that video production house then became what is today one of India's largest television channels, called the India Today channel.
Gosh, well, of course I've heard of you. You're very famous. Madhu Trehan, a very famous journalist. I can't believe it.
So then after that, I left that, wrote a book called Tehelka as Metaphor, which was about a bunch of journalists who did sting operations on army officers, politicians, the president of the ruling party, the girlfriend of the defense minister, bribed them with money, and prostitutes, the army officers with prostitutes, caught them all on tape. And then my book is like a Rashomon, in which nobody comes out looking good, not even the journalists, because they did some sort of naughty things. And funny word to use. And so it is, each incident has different versions of the same story. So then after that, I joined with a person who used to work for me, Abhinandan Sikri, and we started News Laundry, where we critique the press, the media.
Gosh, that's incredible. Well, obviously I've heard of you. You're very famous, Madhu Trehan.
Tell me about yourself, Jack. What are you doing?
Well, normally I live in Italy when I'm not traveling. I'm a musician, and Yeah, I've been to India quite a few times. I've studied to be an Ayurveda practitioner as well, and I've been to Kerala and Tamil Nadu as well. Kerala is like India light, yeah. It's
yeah, we go to Kerala every year for Ayurveda treatment.
Really? Wow. Where do you go?
We go to a place called Kerali.
Kerali, okay.
Kerali. It's near Trivandrum. It's 1 hour from Trivandrum.
Ah, because your husband is quite a famous doctor as well.
Yes, he's a cardiovascular surgeon and he runs the Medanta Hospital.
And he goes for Ayurveda every year?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
In fact, they have in Medanta, they have a full floor dedicated to Ayurveda treatment.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I discovered it about, 10 years ago, and I was just reading a recipe book by Morningstar, this writer, and it just got me so interested in it. I studied it, and I went to India, and I spent quite a few time. I lived in Varkala and also lived in Trivandrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've never been to the north of India, so
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Tam.
It's very different. It's another country.
It's crazy. From what I've heard, it's just India is so intense.
It is. Everything is intense. It's like continuous functioning chaos.
Is that for you? Do you get used to it, or?
Well, one time I went to Germany for a conference and when I arrived there, I actually went into culture shock because there's no one on the streets. It was empty. Where is everybody? It was really scary. Yeah. To me, it was spooky because, of course, in India, wherever you go, there are people.
Yeah, every square inch.
And, but I think now the world has turned topsy-turvy. In fact, there was a thread that I was reading on Twitter today where a brilliant African writer has written about the American elections and the American state of affairs, in which he has turned the tables around and said that African diplomats are arriving in America to make sure the elections go peacefully because civil unrest is expected. And people are preparing by buying guns, and we would like to like the UN to intervene to make sure everything is peaceful. And so he's done a brilliant thread like that.
Oh, yeah, well, they're virtually living under they're choosing between one ancient white guy and one other ancient white guy. But they're both billionaires, I'm sure. So,
yes. One is a little bully and the other one, I'm afraid, has senior moments.
Yeah, it's just between a rock and a hard place, no?
Yeah.
So what's the situation in India at the moment? I haven't been keeping up with it. What's the political?
In India, it's pretty tough for journalists. You have to kind of take a decision that either you toe the line, and if you don't, there can be repercussions. And for many people, there have been repercussions.
Does that mean like they don't give you interviews, or they?
Well, that's easy. That was always there, and that you can survive. But there are always vindictive sort of methods that can be used to target your family, to target you in different ways.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, they can raid you, income tax raids. It's always, it's never straightforward.
Jeez. I was reading in the paper. Your husband, he had charges of money laundering recently, and about some.
Yes, that was interesting because there was this man, a blackmailer, who came to him about a year ago and said, "I've got this pile of papers which shows that you've been money laundering, and either you pay me the 3 million or I will file a case." So my husband said, "I haven't done anything wrong, so go ahead and do whatever you want." So he did file the case, and it was admitted in court by a judge who actually didn't read the papers and didn't realize that this case had been dismissed twice by the High Court and a lower court, as there's no evidence. There's a mountain of papers, but there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. So then now the case is in process, and in fact, my husband has said that he welcomes the chance to actually clear the charges, so that he wants to put all the documents in police possession so they can examine it, and then the judge can decide.
Yeah, you have to have a trial if have anything, you know.
Yes. And so this man has actually been in jail. This accuser, he's been in jail for 6 months for actually blackmailing. This is his modus. He threatens you, and he's on record threatening a guy who's in the construction business, that I will stop your construction unless you pay me.
He's a local resident, yeah.
Yeah. So he does this where he sees anyone building something, he goes in, files cases against the person, says, I will file cases against you for violations for construction unless you pay me. So he does this regularly.
Where we live in Italy, my girlfriend's an architect, and she has a project, and the guy he bought the street, their only access road, and or did a deal with the owner, and then he's suing them, and he sues them about every 6 months, and then they have to pay him some little something, and then he finds another problem, and then so I think it's quite a regular thing if you're doing construction, particularly in Italy. There's people that do this.
Yeah. People can target you, not only in construction, anything that you do. Like my husband was targeted just because actually at that time negotiations were going on where he was talking to people about selling the hospital. And although he then finally decided not to, the numbers that were quoted were in the papers. So it looked like the man was flush with money when actually he's a doctor who is not a businessman. So this man noticed this in the paper and decided this is a good target.
Is it to do with the government targeting you, or is it just a coincidence?
No. The government has targeted me.
Oh no?
No, okay. No. I mean, I have been targeted in the past by previous governments.
Right.
And
haven't you lived through every Indian prime minister? Didn't I hear that?
Pretty much.
Oh, God.
Pretty much. I was born in 1946. So, yes, every prime minister.
Gosh. And some of them have targeted you. So you're on intimate terms with them.
Well, only, I would say only 2 or 3 targeted us. There was Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, not personally himself. In fact, he protected me, but his home minister did target me, wanted to send me to jail. V.P. Singh was one prime minister who did target us, but wasn't very successful. So, yeah, 3 of them come to mind.
Gosh, that's hardball, no? When you start... Yeah, I mean, India's like a bastion of democracy now, so... But in this day and age, what is the government? Get me up to speed with Indian politics. What?
Well, in India, democracy has always been and will continue to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's just not set. There are always challenges. There are always things that go wrong, and then there are young people, and even very old people are actually willing to fight for it. So I think it's something that's although we have the longest constitution in the world because there's so many amendments, it's still not perfect, but I think it's still better than China.
Yeah, a lot of people compare India and China all the time, and I've seen so many books written about it.
Yes. In fact, an interesting story is that once a minister was in China, and China's been trying to build their film industry because they're rather envious of our film industry known as Bollywood. And he asked one of the ministers in China asked our minister that what is the secret of your success, of your film industry success? And our minister answered, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So we do have that.
Yeah.
We do have that in our creative world. Sometimes it's full of turmoil and objections, and many people's sentiments and feelings are hurt, and then all kinds of fights break out, and lawsuits happen. But then, yeah, we do have that freedom.
Yeah, because I mean, India gets a lot of publicity at the moment for a lot of violence, but I guess that's just always been there. But it's attacks against women and beatings, but I guess do you think that's like the journalism is guilty of that, like the rush to the bottom? It's like tabloid.
No, I think there's always been a lot of violence, but I think now we have the consciousness to be able to expose it. So, a lot of these things might have been overlooked in the past, that, that's just the norm. And then also there are a lot of ministers and basically assholes who come up with all this garbage about, like recently a minister in the South says, well, women who are raped should actually die, otherwise, again, the same old sort of nonsense. And so it's a struggle that if you say, I think it was Nehru who said that if you say two opposite things about India at the same time, they'll always be true.
Well, it's a billion people,
So,
isn't
yes.
it? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. And so there is a lot of freedom for women. There are a lot of women who can do whatever they want. And there are a lot of women who, even in villages, have fought against norms and strictures and oppressive cultures. And then there are a lot of things that are still happening, which are very difficult.
Do you think there's this like incredible acceleration that's happening all around the world? Have you noticed it now that as more people get access to technology and with it information, that everything's just accelerating every year, faster and faster? Development.
I don't know the speed. I think it's the intensity that is expanded. The intensity is much more because, of course, people who could never have their say or express themselves can do so very easily now. There is also this sense of loss that I feel coming from the generation I do, that we've lost what India had was a lovely post-colonial culture after the British left, was a culture full of a striving to nobility, to honesty, to a courteousness, caring for the other, a responsibility for how we're going to build our country. I think we've lost that. I think it's become now who can abuse in the most violent way as possible, whether it's on Twitter or anywhere else. So we've lost that kind of sense of decency and aspiring to be good human beings as archaic. That sounds so archaic. It sounds so, when somebody says that, it's like you're told, stop being idealistic. I don't understand why people are told in India, stop being idealistic. I don't know why somebody doesn't tell a politician, stop being so corrupt.
Well, I mean, you had Gandhi who started the whole thing. I mean, he's just, the most inspirational, even more than some religious leaders. He's the founder of the country. So, I mean, you have that.
We've completely lost. Yeah, we've lost that.
I mean, that was just the founding of India like that is in the modern time is an incredible story, And do you think because his children were prime ministers as well? Is that right?
No, his children were all failures in the conventional way. One was an alcoholic, died, from alcoholism. He was a really, I can say, from all his own books, his own autobiography, he was a terrible father.
Really?
He was just a terrible, terrible father, a mean husband and a mean father. And his personal life was a mess.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he actually made demands on his children that were beyond human. And so most of them really were not successful. His grandchildren, however, turned out to be much better. Some of them were writers, philosophers, professors. They did far better. One of our biggest, most important intellectuals is one of his grandsons, Raj Mohan Gandhi, who writes amazing stuff, gives amazing speeches. But in his personal life, I think he was a disaster.
Oh dear, that's not good. I didn't realise that. I thought he was all round perfect. I guess being a journalist, you get to see. There must be so many things that you can read the newspaper like, we read at face value, and then all the the backlinks and this and that behind every story. I mean, do you still get it? Is that very interesting for you? You can still join all the dots?
It's very painful.
Oh yeah.
Because when you read a story and the background on who's planted it and why.
Oh wow.
So when you read today's newspapers, you don't read it. You can't read anything. You cannot. In the old days, you could you suspended disbelief. Right. You read it as a fact. You watch television, you suspended disbelief. But now you look at everything as, okay, why did he edit this out at this point? There must have been more. Why did he cut it off here? Or you look at a print story and you say, well, why is this paper printing this? Who is it against? Who planted it against? Which department or which party or which official? So everything is colored, and post-truth has become a real issue.
Is fake news like a buzzword? Is it in America? Is it the same in India?
Well, in America, it's used by Trump, so it has a different meaning. In India, fake news is really fake news.
Oh, from scratch.
From scratch. So, fake news is used as fake news, not to discredit a liberal television news channel or a print, as Trump does.
Oh. Is that why you started News Laundry then? Do you discuss this kind of thing, like the news behind the news?
Yes, definitely. One of our most successful programs on News Laundry is Nuisance, in which this Manisha Pandey, she's the anchor, and she puts it together with their team. And they analyze the television news, and basically they don't analyze it much. They analyze it, but they do it in a satirical form, make fun of them.
That's more cutting, isn't it? You can also have more license, more liberty.
Yes. And she has huge views. It's really amazing program. Millions of views.
It's hard to be satirical about things like in America, like the Trump and that, and the American politics. It's hard to be satirical.
No, back in India, it's very easy. There's satire without us doing anything.
Say again?
They are satire without having to do any satire. I mean, you just run it and you can laugh.
Yeah, but doesn't that make you as a satirical? Doesn't it make it harder? Because you don't have to make fun of them; they do it themselves.
Yeah, no, but then you take it further.
Okay.
Take it further, and because they're factually stretching things, factually wrong, and so yeah, it's not. You can take it further.
Yeah, we have Spitting Image in England. That was a
yes. So how come you ended up living in Italy?
My girlfriend's Italian. So.
Okay. Which part of Italy are you in?
In near the Amalfi Coast, underneath Napoli, opposite the Amalfi Coast.
Yes. So it must be beautiful at this time too.
It is very beautiful. Yeah, it's a lot cooler now. It's not so hot. You can go outside and.
Yeah. And how is the COVID situation there?
It's not. I mean, well, it depends if you look at the news. If you look at the story behind the story or the news. The news says it's very bad and that there's many cases, and so we should all be we're going more and more lockdown. We were really locked in March. You couldn't even go out the house.
Yeah.
So that was I was 2 months in the house, so that was a bit much.
Did you find it difficult?
Well, I've been living in quarantine for 20 years. I'm a writer and musician, so I work from home, and I've got.
That's what I found. I found that my friends who are writers and artists and musicians, they have really thrived during this isolation.
Yeah, I loved it.
I love it because I don't have this irritation of, okay, I have to get dressed this evening and go out.
Yeah.
And that's gone, and that irritation is gone, and I absolutely love it.
I actually had more company because normally my girlfriend goes out every day for work, but she was at home, so I was in less isolation than before. So
your girlfriend's an architect? My daughter's an architect.
I read about that. Yeah, she I saw she did a wonderful house, drift house on the Little Much farm.
Yeah, she's done some really funky things. She's got a couple of awards and everything. She's designing our house now, which is almost complete. We're moving, so she's designed that one too.
Are you staying in New Delhi, or are you getting out of the city?
We're in New Delhi, but we're moving. The house that we live in now, we moved here because it was close to a hospital that my husband used to work in. And now that he's moved to Gurgaon, to another hospital, Medanta, his own hospital, this new place that we're moving will be closer to that.
Wow, and is it do you have a bit of greenery, or are you in a...
Yes, it's beautiful. It's got a garden back and front and everything. It's actually my husband's father's old house, which he inherited, my husband inherited, and we've knocked it down because it was just, everything was falling apart, and rebuilt it.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, that must be a wonderful problem. But I know from my girlfriend's experience that it's a headache, no? I mean, it's millions of decisions and...
Actually, we've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, yeah. Normally it's a headache, but because this new generation of architects, they are amazing. They just I get an idea, they design what I'm talking about or drawing and showing them, and they design it and implement it. It's magic. And if I have something like I want them to copy, they will not copy. They have oh no, we're not going to copy. We've understood what you want. We'll create our own, like something which inspired from that. So I've loved working with them.
Because what they can do with a computer and the visualizations before you even...
Yeah. It's also like this generation of architects is very different from the previous one. They're far more creative, far more exposed, and into detail of going right from the structure of the building to the furniture to where each switch is going, how your hand will reach at this point. It's the detailing is amazing.
Wow, because where we live, there's a lot of the legacy of the 80s architects, where you know I think they must have had shares in concrete because they were. Yeah. It's just awful, you know, all the schools and the building, you know, and they're decaying as well so quickly because they were made so cheaply. It just shot up, and so it's not built to last. So hopefully it decays soon, but obviously not all people are living in it. But yeah, it's incredible. So that's a good thing.
Explain this project to me.
This one we're in now, on the train or in the podcast. Well, another quarantine idea, you know. I just thought, because I was having trouble getting my music out there as a musician, you know, you release an album every 2 years, you know, and it drops. You hear the drop in the water, blop, and then you hear a few ripples, but you don't get very much, you know. So I thought I'd do these interviews where I've always been writing songs about people, you know. I'm like a documentary songwriter. You know, I've written so many songs that hundreds and hundreds, and it gets a bit boring writing just about me and my life. And so I write about the news and other things. And then I thought, well, I was doing a lot of podcast interviews as well, and I thought, well, I should have my own podcast, and then I should interview people, have my own podcast, and then write a song about them. Obviously, because I'm a songwriter, so that's how it evolved.
Which software are you using to do this?
Zoom.
No, all this recording, train ride, ambience, all this.
I'm recording you on Logic, and then it's on iTunes. The train noise.
Logic Pro X.
Yeah, which is actually a real train. We are on a train.
Okay.
It's not a recording.
That's the software you're using.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because you must have seen. I've seen photos of you on, you know, with, like you say, with all the VHS cassettes behind you, and you look, you know, young and fresh faced, and you know, so you've really seen it. I mean, you've seen. I mean, I've seen the internet come, but you've seen moving pictures come. You know, you've seen everything.
Yeah, so. It's really like going from the silent era, because when I started in journalism, we had typewriters, manual typewriters, then going to electric typewriter. And so from that, and then going from VHS tapes, which was like linear editing. So if you had to edit a story and you wanted to change something in the middle, you had to edit either all the way from the beginning to the middle or from the back to the middle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really tough. And now with the kind of editing you can do where you can push anything in anywhere, it's fantastic. I love it. I love technology.
But do you think like some of the parallels between architects and, right, you know, like the architects now, they can't draw, you know, they can only use their computer. They've kind of lost, because there's only so much time they can have at university. They can only learn so much, so they just do the...
No, I don't know about other architects, but my daughter and her team, they draw.
Oh my God, wow.
Yeah, they draw. I'm always amazed at the steadiness of their hands. That they can.
All right, well, you're ruining my analogy here, but
oh, sorry.
on the whole, I can assure you that most architects don't draw. And do you think you have the same is there some parallels in journalism that people have lost the ability to tell a story because of the new format? What
I'm seeing in the younger generation of journalists, I'm not so happy with.
All right, that's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. So
I'm not so happy with. One, many of them don't understand basic ethics. All right. I was very disappointed to watch an interview going on where a woman is interviewing someone, a young girl is interviewing someone, and she says, she's talking about this actress, and she says that why is she running away from a media trial? Now, she thought a media trial is a good and okay thing to do. That scares me.
Okay, all right.
And she doesn't even know that you don't do a media trial. You leave it to the courts. What you do is you report the story. So there is a warped thinking, a warped learning going on in India because of the terrible kind of programming that there is on news channels or so-called news channels. And I find that there is a less regard for getting the other side, less regard for waiting to making sure that everything is absolutely accurate, and opinion overrides everything else. So I'm not to say that good work isn't happening by young people, but definitely it is. Particularly News Laundry is doing some amazing stuff, going into the villages, covering the Bihar elections and all that right now. But I do feel that there is a dislocation almost, a cognitive dissonance that is happening, where young people are not going through the process of learning good journalism and then getting their understanding what it takes to make a full good story.
Is that because of the format of the media? With everything has to be snippets and you have to get
I think
people
some is that. Sometimes they mistake. I when I'm reading copy, I feel like I'm reading a Twitter feed.
Right. And shorter and shorter.
Yeah, and it's not the shorter part. It's more that I can shout anything, I can abuse, I can say anything I like, without fact, without backing it up, and just rant. And that's not journalism.
So you mean even the longer opinion pieces in newspapers?
They're not in newspapers, but on the internet, they tend to become just rants. And that to me is disappointing.
But is that because that's what people want to read? I mean, are people looking for articles that match their opinions?
I think it's what people want to read. I think this is how people think it's now okay to express themselves. I'm all for writing funky stuff, not writing Victorian English. I think I'm okay to use slang. You can use whatever language you like. I'm okay with even what is called foul language. That's, as Milan Kundera wrote, obscenity is the root connection to your obscenity is the connection to your roots. That's what he wrote. So I'm paraphrasing a bit. So I'm okay with all that. But I think you've got to have substance even in that. You've got to have strength in that. And just ranting your head off is not strong.
But don't you think that, because I've seen like, especially with the American elections, for example, I went round one's friend's house, and he was spending, I think, 8 hours a day watching. Every day these people have new, these YouTube channels have new videos coming out, and there's all the news about it, and they just have the one. You look at the people who are on the same wing, So it's this constant. So you have to. You're competing against these other people shouting. The most profanity, and then do you think there's that competition to have the worst opinion? I mean,
yeah, it's. I'm not sure whether that is even successful, because they found that what is called the television viewer ratings, the TRPs, they have been fudged, and there's been a scandal on that. So I don't even know if the claims they make as being the highest watched channel for their just for abusing and ranting, whether it's even true.
But do you know, that you don't even have to be a journalist these days to be a journalist. You can start your own media outlet,
Yes.
Through YouTube or something. You don't need any training.
Yeah.
As long as you're to be a YouTuber or a
Yeah.
or a blogger, you can just have a a strong opinion and a funny style or whatever, you can have a huge audience without.
I'm not
you
against
don't
that.
need a gatekeeper.
There've been some really good, successful ones, and I'm certainly not against that. If somebody can put some substance in their YouTube channel and critique whatever they want to, or give news the way they want to, I'm okay with that. I think people are smart enough to figure out the truth and what it is, but
are they? Are they really? I mean, because
no,
they're just looking for
not
opinion pieces to support their opinions. No,
exactly. People are just looking for validation all the time, and that is dangerous, because unless you're listening to the other side, no matter how much you disagree with, you're stuck in your views and you're not learning anything. So that is that's another sort of cloud that is on us right now, which is really sad, because we've become channel thinkers, that I just want to think like this and I only want to watch stuff that supports what I believe in.
But do you think that's always been it's on the contrary? Like, I used to, in England, I used to buy The Guardian because I was, young and liberal, and then there was, there was the Times if I wanted the other opinion. The newspapers were still, there was one who was always left wing or right wing.
Right. Where did you grow up?
In England, near Bury St Edmunds near Cambridge.
Okay. I went to school for 2 years in Surrey when I was 8 years old.
Oh, as well. Oh,
yeah.
So you've been all over.
Yeah, and then went to college there also, studying journalistic photography. So.
Wow. Well, that's working in another culture has opened your mind so much now to have to see your own country with a perspective, and especially as a journalist and a writer, that kind of travel is amazing. Really opens your perspective, so you can speak with clarity on things.
It's been interesting.
So do you think you're ever gonna, because you've had such a fascinating life, do you think you're ever gonna write a biography or anything like that?
No, because I the only way I could see doing it is to maybe write some short stories of fun stuff that happened, but I can't do a linear report because a lot of it I can't remember exactly, so it would be difficult to be accurate. But I had an extremely fascinating childhood with my brother growing up in what is now known as Mumbai, but Bombay at that time. And yes, I would love to write stories about that, because my father, after he moved from what is now Pakistan during the partition, he moved to Bombay and decided to become a film financier, and financed what became one of the biggest money-making popular filmmakers in the country was Raj Kapoor, where they made blockbusters for years. And that was a fascinating life. We lived in an area where a colony, what you'd call a colony, where everybody was in the film business. So the children were of a heightened awareness of a different kind. When a father's film flops, when creativity is going on, where a script reading is going on, you can't make a noise and play outside, that kind of thing. So it's very interesting. And birthday parties where plays were enacted very seriously. At the age of 5, I was given a script to learn. So, it was a fascinating childhood.
Oh my God. So it's really like a commune of artists.
Well, I guess so, yeah. Yeah, it was in one way.
So there you go. That's what China needs, rather than, and liberation.
Yeah.
And your niece is an actress as well, isn't she?
Yes, Koel. Yeah, she lives in France right now. She's married to a Frenchman.
Okay.
And she's in Paris, and they're going through not an easy time. Yeah.
No. Well, hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, then things will have lightened up. But
yes.
Yeah, we're all going through
these
strange times.
I wish you the best in Italy. I'm sure things will be wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
You're in a good place.
I've got enough to keep me busy, and I get, thanks to this project, I get to. I mean, unless we were on a train together, I would never get this opportunity to chat to someone as interesting as you about life in New Delhi and your childhood in Bombay. I mean,
it's lovely to talk to you. It's always I love meeting new people.
No, I do have to write a song about this. That's my meal ticket. That's what I have to pay my way.
Okay.
So, I was thinking about this media and the validation and media ethics is quite what we talked a lot about. But is there anything else that you think you would like a song about?
No. How will you make money out of this?
Well, I don't have many costs, so I don't need to make too much money. I mean, I get my olive oil down the road and I grow my vegetables, so I just have to pay my internet bill.
Okay.
So maybe I'll get a few donations from lovely listeners. Or all the songs are on my website. You can pay to download them.
Okay. I'll tell my family to donate.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You can also I will release the song on Spotify and iTunes and Deezer, so it'll be available for everyone to listen on their platform as well.
One thing I could also clue you in on was this very funny contempt of court case that was filed against me by the Supreme Court.
Oh, here we go.
I was running a magazine at that time called Why India, and we sent a report card around to all the senior lawyers to rate the judges in the High Court on honesty, integrity, knowledge of law, punctuality, and courtesy.
Okay.
And they did rate them, and then we published it. And then the Supreme Court hauled me up for contempt of court for that, because in India, you are not allowed to... it's an old British law, which is continued till now, which in England, they don't take it seriously anymore. It's been junked. But in India, that old British law is still being followed. And according to that law, you're not supposed to pass comment on the judiciary. So I nearly went to jail for that. So,
oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I just saw a film called The Chicago 7.
Yeah.
On Netflix.
Wow, what a brilliant film.
Yeah.
What a brilliant film. And Borat, I didn't recognize him. He's so good.
He was very good, yeah.
You know, my generation lived through that. We were in America at that time.
Oh, really?
Yes. And your generation actually missed the party, because you have no idea what it was like at that time to be breaking all the boundaries of everything. You know, suddenly women, breaking down the concepts of machismo, the marriage, free love, protesting against the Vietnam War, the schism between the older generation and the hippies was so wide that you announced your political beliefs by your clothes, how you smelt of grass, all that. Life was political on a daily basis in everything that you did, how you lived. So that period, which is shown in Chicago 7, with just the trial, doesn't show the background. I mean, you look at the movie, the documentary Woodstock, that gives you another part of that time. It was an amazing time.
So you were in America at that time?
Yes.
Gosh. With a flower in your hair and a
banner
in your hand?
Totally at peace. We were totally at peace. My husband had shoulder length hair. And when he applied for a job at New York University Medical Center, he was told that you'll never get a job with your hair that length. But he did.
Wow. So do you think this is a very stagnant time when you look at it?
Yes.
In terms of...
Look, it's a very brainwashed time where people accept the norm as this is it. I don't think there's enough questioning. I don't think there's enough rebellion. The only rebellion that I'm seeing a little bit is in, like, yesterday I saw a story on one of the American channels where the young people have organized to vote against Trump because of the gun violence. And they're working on it, spreading the word that you have to vote against the free availability of guns. And that kind of thing, the issue-based rebellion and working towards it, such as like Black Lives Matter and all these sort of things, they're very isolated. Whereas at that time, it was a full international movement.
You think it was easier then because it was it was so obvious the enemy but now it's so you have to pick an issue, and then because maybe people are divided about different issues. Yes, I like my guns, but I'm also for Black lives, or I'm for People
I
are
think
so.
in some way it's a little more confusing, but I think it's also because of the materialistic stance, of the materialistic brainwashing. People are not willing to take the same risks as people did then, where they just gave up corporate jobs. Corporate jobs were mocked at, and you went and lived in a commune and had a happy life, so called. There were lots of sort of chinks in that also. It didn't all work out beautifully. There were lots of issues in communes also. But it was a time that was magical, as I remember it. There was an effort to. There was a natural ambience of let's love each other. John Lennon's song "Imagine" came of that time. It spoke of that time.
Yeah, I think we all wish we were alive in the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sterile now, and everyone's pushing their own individual agenda, and there's not this collectiveness. And
exactly.
Everyone wants to be an influencer or a.
There's so many issues like the environment, climate change, pollution in India is just horrendous. Our rivers are polluted. Our trees are being, forests are denuded. It's really so many issues that we could come together in. But I think in India, particularly, personal survival is always so difficult because there's so many issues, not because of the money, but because there's so many daily hassles. I think it's the world around, the daily hassles of everybody surviving is not easy.
No. Yeah, and there's so many, women don't have equal rights yet or anything way near, and there's still racism, and so there are these daily battles, like you say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well. Okay.
Well, all right. Well,
thank you so much.
We should end on a cheerful note. So
yes. We should end on a cheerful note that whatever happens, we'll always be able to make good of it. That is the Buddhist thinking. That's the Hindu thinking, and I think there's no reason why we can't. It's not a cliche. I think that's the thing. Out of all this horrible stuff, great things are happening. Like you say, the artists, the writers, the musicians, we're able to focus.
Yeah. All right,
and meeting people like you, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, it was wonderful to chat to.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Madhu.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
My opinion is what people pay me for. I don't think I know any more than you or anyone else. My opinion is for the gullible, and I'm not culpable, just an actor playing a part. I tell people what they wanna hear, an affirmation of their own ideas. In a world of billions, under dominion, you need strong opinions, lightly held. My opinion may be overkill, but it pays my bills, which is more than you can say for yours. My opinion brings in advertising, which sells people other things. The cycle is shuddering. I'm an illustrator, that is all. The picture that I paint must be colorful, 'cause in the world of billion, under dominion, you need strong opinions, lightly held. Take what I say with a pinch of salt. The actions of others are not my fault. Can I be blamed for behavior, refusal to think? If someone pours you poison, do you drink? In the world of billions, under dominion, you need strong opinions, lightly held. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to hear the song again, you can get it on Spotify, Deezer, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube, anywhere. And if you stream 1,000 times, I can afford to buy a cup of coffee. If you really want to support the show, please go to podsongs.com and pay $1 for it, or €1, depending on where you are. Even if you don't want the download, send it to a friend as a gift. And if you could share the podcast as well, that would be great. Thanks to my musicians, Maurizio San Nicola and Massimino Vozza, and my researcher, Dori Verba. And thanks to you, the listener. See you next time.